So I'm obsessed with different adaptations of the same source material, and I try and showcase that on this channel. One of the most tantalizing subjects to see iterated on by different directors, by different filmmakers, is musicals. So when I found out that there was a drama adaptation, a straight adaptation of the source material for Cabaret, I had to jump on it. I Am a Camera is a 1955 movie. It's directed by Henry Cornelius, and it's based off of the writings of Charles Isherwood, Christopher, sorry, Charles is different. It's based on the writings of Christopher Isherwood during his time in Berlin, the Berlin stories, as well as the play by John Van Druten. The story is, if you're familiar with Cabaret, the story is about the lounge cabaret, the cabaret singer Sally Bowles, and her relationship with Christopher Isherwood's stand-in character. So yeah, I'm interested to check out this adaptation of the story that inspired Cabaret. Obviously, there won't be as much of the razzle-dazzle. Wrong, Candor Neb. But I'm interested to see how the story translates to a straight adaptation, without as much of the bells and whistles. So yeah, let's watch I Am a Camera. This is a Romulus picture. I believe Laurence Harvey was under contract with the Romulus during this time. Ooh, and this also stars Shelley Winters. You might know from Lolita, Night of the Hunter. Ooh, associate producer Jack Clayton.
My name is Christopher Isherwood.
I really love Laurence Harvey's hair. He does a lot of storytelling with his hair in different movies.
I'd better add, I am a novelist, a confirmed bachelor.
I just want to say, I kind of miss, I don't know, every once in a while, I miss this kind of design of a movie or of a novel as partially a memoir. Like this setup, obviously, perhaps most famously, is showcased in Breakfast at Tiffany's, but also The End of the Affair by Graham Greene and Sophie's Choice. It's a really interesting kind of dynamic to bring a writer in to an already established dynamic, because it reflects kind of real world applications, because usually it's based on the memoirs of the writer. It's also modern because usually they form a triumvirate with two other people, so there's a threesome kind of social dynamic to that, whether that be sexual or if it just is platonic. And I don't know. It's always an interesting triangulation where an already kind of established mannerisms or behaviors is upset by the introduction of this kind of character, this kind of passive observer. So let's see how it affects this story.
I could hardly believe my eyes.
It was me,
Sally Bowles.
Sally Bowles.
Quite a story. A story in which nothing happened and yet
Everything happened. What happened to you in this story?
So I went to Berlin. It was 1931.
You see what I mean about Laurence Harvey telling stories with his hair? And we see the kind of the through line between this and Cabaret, obviously, of the rise of the Nazis. This is making it far more explicit in its own way than Cabaret. Cabaret has the Nazis in the background for a lot of the first half until they finally come to the fore with Tomorrow Is Mine.
Yesterday, at this party, I met a young lady.
That's her? Yes.
Sally Bowles. Played in exactly the opposite way of Cabaret. Cabaret goes to different lengths of introducing Sally Bowles. It kind of introduces her character 3 times. But I like the biographical detail that's carried between this and Cabaret, that Sally Bowles has the little beauty mark, the fake beauty mark.
But I know I'll love him now till my dying day.
I do like her dress, though. It's obviously not Fosse, but it is his own thing. They've established early on that Sally Bowles is the girl who smiles but is crying deep inside. That doesn't come until much later in the musical.
You needn't be afraid of me. There's no room for that sort of thing in my life. You see, I've work to do, very important work.
Oh. Okay.
must be.
They've straight washed it. I mean, that's to be expected, but I was wondering if they were going to lean just a little bit, just a little hint, perhaps that there was something else going on.
Is this your bed? Perfectly pure. Was it Wednesday? 2 or 3 nights ago. He looked so divinely sinister.
But you said he was your fiancé.
I actually really like aspects of her costuming. It's very, very different from Liza Minnelli, but for the 50s at least, it's not really denying that she has some sort of intentional sexual appeal to the way that she dresses.
I mean, I may not be absolutely exactly what some people call a virgin.
I'm not sure about the headpiece,
No
but
reason for her to call me what she called
I don't
me.
really know what was like sexy back in the 50s
So what if that you're afraid of me?
or
Of course, I
something.
did make a vow.
If you're going to live here...
They really are. I'm glad they're not shying away from Sally's characterization, at least.
Well, we'll talk about it in the morning.
It's actually really funny, the difference of pace between this and Cabaret, because from how I conceptualize Cabaret, it's a really thrillingly edited movie, and you feel a rush watching it, but something that people don't really speak as much about in terms of the filmic style and the editing style of Bob Fosse is that he enjoys like stillness or isolation or staticness a lot. And so a lot of his scenes, the scenes in Cabaret, are infused with a degree of like pause and silence. And this is actually pretty, it has a comedic style to the editing.
This is Miss Bowles, a very respectable young English lady.
Practically a nun. You see, I made a vow.
She wanted a room exactly
See,
like
the
this one,
kind
so I
of
brought
the
her.
way that they speak to each other, it's like a slapstick comedy or like a screwball comedy. It's hitting the tennis ball back and forth, back and forth.
Now listen, Fritz, there's nothing between Sally and me.
Strange, but true.
I come to say, Chris, unfortunately, I cannot have my lesson today. Do you mind?
Oh, not in the very least.
Is this the Marissa Berenson role?
This winter there are many who do not have clothes to cover them.
Yes.
And I'm one of them. Oh, one of the unemployed, I mean. Terrific, insane sort of night.
Jesus
Absolutely nothing in the
Christ.
world so good for you as a prairie oyster.
So messy. Did that
I
in
think
one
that
take.
Sally rather likes to shock people.
Schneider?
Yeah, this is like full on directed as a comedy. I'm sure it'll take a turn because I know the story of Cabaret, but
No, just vitamins and things. Want some?
No, thanks. I've got rather too much...
is this their way of working around the character being bisexual, instead making him a hypochondriac? If so, that's a weird like telephone or word association. We have to communicate that he's a
very best pair.
fop without
Talking of those
communicating
who
that he's a
scarcely
fop.
worn them.
What's the good of trying to explain? What's the good of trying to write?
This version of Chris is like much less likable than Brian. I don't know. Maybe it's like this characterization is something that was brought by Van Druten. But this version of Chris kind of sucks.
What the?
No!
Just where I'm concerned.
You're the Puritan.
Straight Chris is not nice.
You'd hate me, Chris. That's why it was ugly. We'd never be able to talk to each other again. It'll get better. After this horrible winter's over, you'll feel different. Truly you will.
I am not sure about straight Chris.
Treating you like other girls. You have to admit you are a bit respectful.
But Natalia, how not?
Well, bowing's not going to do you any good. If
Oh,
were a
I
girl
see.
like
The
you,
pounce anecdote.
Rather impressed by a pounce.
How?
Yes, you know, anybody can pounce on anybody, and generally they do.
I mean, that's not terrible advice, I guess. It's just like awkwardly placed, like right after a scene of Chris pouncing on her that is portrayed very negatively.
3 marks each for the drinks, and 1 for the tip. That's only 7 marks.
It's all very well for bankers and princes,
but I can't afford to be ruined.
This characterization of Sally Bowles is like, I don't know.
Just one, you understand?
It's like a 20-something in Brooklyn. It's a performance. It's a treatment of the material that's very geared towards like the lighter side of things, and so I'm worried about how well it'll handle the transition into the not as light things.
Cocktails de champagne.
No, Sally.
Caviar pour madame.
Chris, you've got to try this.
Encore un champagne cocktail pour madame.
I'm like really, really worried, but I'm interested to know, because like they've got to turn this around. This has got to win the audience over eventually, but it's being pushed so far to the comedic extreme. Like, I don't know if exactly this is a likable version of Sally Bowles. It's like a fun version of Sally Bowles, and I'm having fun because I know the character, and because I know
Oh, look, Chris. Yellowish cigarettes with tew.
like the whole spectrum of her personality.
Oh, love, Chris, I've got to have this beer. I feel so Russian.
But for an audience like in like 1950s, I don't know like if this is an entirely like
Sally, you've gone absolutely stark, staring, raving mad.
an entirely likable version of Sally Bowles.
Any mess you get into, you try and get out of by using your extremely inadequate sex appeal.
Wow. Why are these two friends?
It's adequate.
Inadequate.
It's such a weird tension, because this is like choosing to gloss over all of the they're not allowed to say what's going on in any of these scenes.
Simply do
And
not
so
ask me what this is all about.
It's a weird tension of like, how far are they going to press up against what's the actual story of Christopher Isherwood's time in Germany, until they have to actually break it, until they have to actually talk about the things that are happening here. Like, are there actually going to be Nazis in this movie? How are they going to manage the shift in tone?
Some people would have called it an ordinary hangover.
There's like no escalation to this whatsoever. There's just going to be a scene where suddenly the Nazis have taken over. There's like a lot of weird scenes that they can't obviously talk about Christopher Isherwood's sexuality, but they make scenes that like poke fun at or like humiliate him for the sexuality that he doesn't have in this version. I mean, these scenes would be present if he was these scenes would be present in like a straight comedy as well, but the kind of like the way it reads is particularly insulting this character by having all of this kind of like manhandling. I think it's going overboard with the comedic aspects of this, that there's not really enough like import or introspection that's being led with this version, that is just like Belmont until the Nazis show up. And I think that's a bit deceitful about the point. If it like focuses on Sally Bowles just being fun and like frames the entire work around that, about it being like a comedic romp, it necessarily lacks depth.
Some guy's funeral.
Say, are they giving him the works?
Strasbourg, probably. It was in the papers today.
That old guy the Nazis bumped off? Boy, is this a town to get out of.
Yeah, just like no subtlety or nuance to it whatsoever. It's just like the high life and then the low life. That's stark a turn. No elements of one in the other. No understanding of how one exists in the other or one fuels the other.
Egypt!
Floating down the Nile, with the desert all
I like also hate how this characterizes Sally Bowles, particularly Sally Bowles, and not Christopher Isherwood, as ignoring the the warning signs of Berlin and of Germany, and of like exercising privilege and ignoring it. That is an aspect to the story of Cabaret, that these characters kind of necessarily ignore the warning signs until it overtakes them. But it's not necessarily because they are like, especially it's not because Sally's privileged. In Cabaret, they ignore the warning signs because they're like fighting, because they're poor, because they're trying their best, because they lack agency.
Chris, you look marvelous.
Like, this is such a damning portrayal of Christopher Isherwood and of Sally Bowles as being just like privileged and frivolous, especially frivolous. It's such a frivolous portrayal.
Hi, I just wanted to pop in and clarify the statement because I don't think I explained it very well. One of the most compelling and complicated aspects of Cabaret, the musical, is that Sally and the other characters, to a degree, are collaborators. They are willingly allowing this to happen, and in part that is due to their status as outsiders, as minorities, as underprivileged. Sally is a singer, she is a sex worker, Brian is queer, and the film illustrates through Sally and through the MC as well that these characters, because they live on the fringe of society, they actually benefit from there being a larger scapegoat than them. Whether implicitly or explicitly, they are under the delusion that if the Jews are persecuted by the Germans, then there will not be oversight for their actions, for their depravity or perversion within a societal framework. For the duration of the film, they willingly turn a blind eye to the strife of the Jews because in some small way it benefits them. And that is one of the central tensions of the movie, of the musical, is seeing how captivating, how charming, how wonderful, genuinely wonderful and sympathetic and relatable a character that Sally Bowles is, and to know that when the chips are down, she will largely do nothing to support her friend Fritz, to support Natalia. And the scene of her getting an abortion, while that's complicated in its own right, can be read as an indictment on this class of citizens, the bohemian class of citizens in Germany, who is unwilling to take a stake in the future of their country, who wishes to terminate at this generation and only lives for today, that only lives for the pleasures and sensations of today because they aren't afforded many days of these pleasures, but at the sacrifice of tomorrow, which is inevitably taken by the Nazis.
It is the Jews, believe me, a plot to bring the country down.
Oh, you know, that's absolute rubbish.
You should listen to the radio, to the speeches, Herr Isherwood. But you don't care. You are going.
And this was a scene as well. Michael York yelling at people for blaming it on the Jews.
Not good at all. She'll never come back, you know.
Who wants to come back?
I can see us 10 years from now. You married to Clive.
I didn't even realize this whole time. Max is Maximilian. That makes sense.
Well, say.
I didn't even realize, because they made him fucking American in this version. And he's so straight in this version. It's just screwing up my fucking brain.
Max loves buying things.
He's Max. He's the one who tried to have a threesome kiss with them in Cabaret. I completely missed that because this version is completely different.
Sally, dear, so sorry must postpone our jaunt. Crazy people here insist on trip up the Amazon. Let's hope for next year or sometime. Love to both, Clive.
The way that Max, like, ditches Sally and Chris and Brian in Cabaret is characterized so differently than this. This is just like, he just jumps ship for whatever reason. And in Cabaret, it's because he realizes that Brian will never return his affections, and also, obviously, the rise of the
We
Nazis.
were well off before, I suppose. Shut up in this hole, not even able to go out to a cafe. You moaning and groaning all the time and sucking my blood like some dreary, clammy pill.
There's, like, no, like, progression in this version. There's also, like, a very difficult issue of progression in Cabaret, too. It's a very fine, like, balance that it has to strike. But in this, it's, like, just a completely sequential order of events.
Good.
Like, suddenly Max just leaves because he's
Sorry, I'll be gone.
angry how jealous Chris is of him. And you're like, what? Where did that come from?
Deutschland erwache! Wir Nationalsozialisten wollen...
Don't have him win this. He needs to get beaten up. We need to understand that the Nazis are actually a terrifying force.
Think of all that's happened in the world since then. That little scuffle seemed nothing to write home about.
That little scuffle.
Now, with Sally off my neck, I was ready to start a new chapter.
You see, Chris is as privileged and as idiotic and as ignorant and as frivolous as Sally Bowles. He sees this, like, he sees this incoming disaster with the Nazis and his relationship with Sally Bowles and all of this. He sees it through the lens of his writing. Who the fuck cares? She's
What have you
pregnant.
been saying to Schneider?
Is she going to be pregnant in this version?
No. Maybe she thinks somehow that you're the father.
Oh my god.
The what?
Oh, what?
The father.
What are they going to do in this version? Are they allowed? She's going to have a miscarriage
You
in
angry
this.
that I'm still here?
She's not going to get the abortion.
I think we ought to be awfully practical about having this baby.
Practical is just not having it.
I suppose so.
Wow, they actually
I
did
don't
say
like the
that.
idea.
That's nice. I mean, that's
I'm not
different.
Exactly crazy about it, darling.
I didn't know they could actually say these things or suggested in a 1955 film, so that's nice to know. And then they just completely gloss over
Would
it.
it help at all if you were,
Married.
if it was official?
Here, dear Fräulein, is some good herb tea.
Nice abortion
Schneider, there's
tea.
been a lot of misunderstanding.
This is gonna have some sort of fucking happy ending.
I must believe that one day the German people will understand what these Nazis are.
And then you'll come back.
But you write to us and visit us if you can. Both of you.
I can't believe they've managed to make like a World War II
Goodbye.
film.
Bye, Fritz.
A narrative about World War II seems so frivolous.
Must say my advice turned out rather well.
The Nazis are just like not
Out of my little triumph.
a huge issue at all.
You read it? He liked it? He paid for it.
Didn't say, except I suppose he wants to make some changes or something.
Chris, you mustn't come another step.
But why not?
No, you must go back to that editor.
But I can't let you go to that place all alone.
Nonsense, Chris. Now,
What?
look, he may be testing you to see if you're keen. He may be...
They've turned this abortion story into he needs to go get some notes from his editor.
Brilliant young man. Who plays.
And then I never saw her again.
Good luck, Don.
Good luck. Good luck with your abortion.
Now listen, I'm in a rush, so we'll talk in the car. I'll drop you off near your home, see? Now get the idea.
Like,
Put on Madrid.
the characters in this movie make no decisions whatsoever. You cannot understand what their internal morals are at all. Things just happen to them. He just has to ship away to America for some reason
$50 and all
on the
expenses
exact
paid.
day.
I was raring to go. I felt quite a pang at leaving Sally. But I knew she was in good hands and well looked after.
What are you talking about? She had the baby. What is this movie?
Sally.
Don't
On
understand.
the way to that dreadful place, there was a traffic jam. And the taxi stopped in front of the most wonderful
I
shop
can't
in the world.
deal with this movie
All for
anymore.
little children.
It's just, I can't.
Cradles
I
and
hate these
bottles.
people.
So I thought that, well, as you were so terribly decent as to say we could get married,
I said, what?
You did.
Chris.
You did. What are you talking about?
Oh, dear.
Oh, darling. No, Chris, don't scoff at me.
I love that at the beginning of this movie, the framework that Christopher Isherwood provides is that
Absolutely perfect.
it was more that happened to anybody than any other event in history, and it happened more to me than it did to her. What exactly fucking happened to Chris over the course of this movie?
Anthony Isherwood.
If I dozed for a moment, I had visions of a boy like Clyde, followed by a string of little girls, all exactly like Sally. I don't think my health has ever completely recovered from the agony of that night.
He left Germany because he didn't want to have multiple kids. Does World War II affect this narrative at all?
Here's our coffee. I made it good and strong. You see, darling, I never was much good at arithmetic. I mean that people who are strange and extraordinary and terrific sort of personalities are usually rather above being good at figures and all that. I could never understand dates.
Tell me, please, is he...
This is, like...
He isn't.
This movie is misogyny.
But in a way, he never really was.
He was a mistake?
Well, I don't think it's very nice to call him
And I
that.
suppose that gives him free reign to just fucking go.
Clive said in his telegram.
Yeah, so she didn't need to get an abortion. She was just late on her period. She didn't keep track of her period, I guess.
Well,
Fucking women, I guess.
But don't come down.
This movie is a hate crime.
You see, it's all come true. I mean, you really have written something at last. You wouldn't have except for me. Well, that's inspiring, isn't it?
I don't even know what to say about this. I don't know what to say about this. This is like, it's so deeply unserious. The Nazis weren't even a part of this story. This wasn't about the Nazis.
Darling, you look
It's just a fucking happy ending. The fucking Nazis had nothing to do with this movie. This was on the verge of a minstrel performance. I'm sure this depiction of Sally Bowles has its fans. I liked it for the first 20 minutes. This was a minstrelsdom of femininity. This movie is an attack on women. Who defends this shit? On the occasion of its video release in 1985, Laurence Van Gelder of the New York Times found that this film, while suffering in comparison to the more lavish Cabaret, is still charming in its way, mostly because of Harris's performance as Sally. Jesus. In an August 1955 pictorial, Life magazine called the film's party sequence violently funny. I love that that's something that's remembered about a World War II narrative, a violently funny hotel scene. Life praised Harris's acting, while at the same time finding the film spends maybe too much time on Harris's character. Still, Life felt confident predicting the film's success. This film is for misogynists. Bosley Crowther of the New York Times gave I Am a Camera a bad review, finding it meretricious, insensitive, superficial, and just plain cheap. I would agree with all that. Crowther was particularly appalled by John Callier's script, yes, blasting it for largely abandoning both the Van Druten, okay, so it wasn't Van Druten's fault, and Isherwood's source material. He also sharply criticized the abortion material, deeming it a capstone of cheap contrivance and tasteless indelicacy. Julie Harris he labeled a show-off, while Laurence Harvey is an anxious straight man for her jokes. With all parties directed by Cornelius with no eye for any subtlety of character. Indeed. Listen, Bosley Crowther is a humbug, certainly, but in this instance, I too am a humbug, if a humbug means confronting reality. In a letter to friend John Lerman, Christopher Isherwood called the film disgusting ooh la la, near pornographic trash, a shameful exhibition. Yeah, I mean, I'd go for all of that. So the funny thing is, this movie caused a scandal in its time. Apparently, this was an incredibly audacious film, which is, you're like, what part of it is audacious? Considering Cabaret. And you know what they found controversial back in the 1950s? The abortion, obviously. Though there's no abortion in this movie. It's a false pregnancy. But they were annoyed at the promiscuity of Sally Bowles. That was the controversy of this movie. The promiscuity of Sally Bowles. That's none of your fucking business. Like, I can't... I mean, I guess it reflects society today more so than anything. It seems like it would be more familiar in 2022 than it would in 1972. But imagine like an audience in 1972 watching Cabaret and watching all of the different versions of immorality and evil that movie depicts. And by evil, I mean apathy, willful ignorance, and complicity, and acts of collaboration. And thinking that the worst thing in that is that Sally Bowles has sex with more than one partner. What? Oh. But I mean, that's America today, so we're going back, I guess. This was disgusting. I fucking hated this. I thought this would be such an interesting interpretation of the same material through a straight lens, not like heterosexual, but through a straight play lens, and it was disgusting. I hated this. This wasn't even enjoyable to me. Like, this movie has no moral core to me. It took material that was about witnessing the rise of fascism, that was about living on the edges of society, that was about poverty, that was about queerness, that was about helplessness and escape, and turned it into a showcase, an acting showcase for any particular female performer who happens to virulently hate women. I don't know if Julie Harris virulently hates women, but she sold out her entire gender doing this movie. That's going too far. I'm sure she has her fans, and I'm sure they're going to come after me. But this was fucking misogynistic. She didn't win an Oscar for this. She won a Tony. I'm sure maybe the play version is different. I hope. I fucking hope. I can't keep talking about this. I need to never think about this ever again. Yeah, that was I Am a Camera. Holy shit. Fuck this movie. Don't watch it. Not even as a curiosity. It's fucking hell. If you love Cabaret, this will infect your soul. You will know that the world is capable of making this. This was like a... If you've ever read that Onion article about the kindergarten production of Equus, this is that with the same amount of moral consideration. Yeah, this was trash. In the meantime, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe for more old, obscure, and art house films. And until next time, don't watch shit like this. Maybe we should destroy movies. Maybe we do need to destroy older movies. Maybe there is no purpose. Maybe we should let it burn. Walter Kerr wrote a review for the stage performance of High of a Camera, where he wrote Mina Leica. Jesus, this shit sucked.